Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome everyone to across the region and across the world. We are live here on LinkedIn and WeChat, so if you're having a good day and you are with us, please hit the like button, let us hear you, and let us know that you're having a great day. To our friends in China on WeChat, ni hao. To our friends in Japan, konnichiwa. For everyone else across the region, a very warm welcome, a hello, and thank you for joining us for our second live streaming event here along our series around lifelong learning. I encourage all of you to please pop questions in the chat section and comments here on LinkedIn and WeChat throughout our session today. And our topic today, as you can see, is all around multi-generational workforce. So if you're brave, and no pressure here, why don't you put in what generation you might be? Are you Gen Z? Are you millennial? What are you? So why are we here on the LinkedIn live streaming session? Well, we want to bring together experts from across the HR and L&D community with experiences in multiple industries to dialogue, to debate, and discuss topics close to the hearts of people development. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so please put your questions in the chat and we'll be ready to respond to them live. If not today, we'll definitely be following up with you. And do stay on, because we will have a special Lucky Dip draw at the end with some prizes to give away. So, to kick things off, we have Nihal Nangia, Research Director for the Josh Bersin Company, here to share the latest trends and insights on leadership development for a multi-generational workforce. Welcome, Nihal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nihal Nangia, and I lead learning and leadership research at the Josh Bersin Company. Before we dive deep into the topic of leadership, let's first take a look at the macroeconomic context of why leadership and the topic of leadership development is so important today. What started as the Great Resignation in 2020 continues to be a phenomenon that still rages in full swing. The quit rate, which is the percentage of people who voluntarily quit their jobs every month, is at an all-time high. Almost 3% of the workforce is quitting each month. 12 threes are 36. That's more than a third of the workforce leaving their jobs this year. And of them, 2/3 do not have another job lined up. They're exhausted. They don't want to commit their time and lives to work or businesses where they don't feel they have trust and control over what might suddenly hit them one fine day. We wanted to understand what keeps people from quitting. What is it that has the highest impact on driving engagement and retention and creating an employee experience that will make people stay? So we did an enormous study on employee experience. We studied close to 100 practices that impact employee experience. And here's what we saw. These are the top 15 most impactful practices. And if you look closely, you'll see those yellow icons dominating, which are all practices related to trust in the organization. 10 out of the 15 most impactful employee experience practices have to do with trust in the organization, transparency, empathy, integrity, and an inclusive, positive work environment. Bottom line is, people today need to trust the organization. And this context is extremely important for our webinar today, because in every organization, it is leaders, after all, that are the vehicle for building trust in the organization, especially in a volatile business environment today, making the topic of leadership more important than ever before. Okay, I really love this quote. I recently came across it and it really resonated. It says, in the industrial era, jobs were about the muscles, how strong you are. Then with the internet and digitalization came the era of how smart you are, being a knower, being right. But in the future, jobs will be all about the heart, how much you care. And that is absolutely true for leadership today and in the future. And building on this idea of trust and care and empathy is this notion of human-centered leadership. You know, you might wonder that there is no such thing as leading without thinking about humans. But every single leadership situation, decision, meeting, and every behavior that a leader exhibits at work can be thought of as two parts. There's the business part. What is the decision or action that we need to take to improve the performance of the company or team or product or whatever that is? And then there's the human side. What can we do or should we do to make the team more effective, to make the individual more effective, to help them learn, to give them an environment where they can innovate and grow? And what we've learned, especially from the pandemic, is that during good times, you can focus on the left. But during uncertain times and stressful times of change, you have to focus on the right. Organizations need to build leaders who care. You need to build leaders across generations, regions, career levels, across every function, team, or segment in your organization. And you need to support leaders on how to be more empathetic, more sensitive, and more inclusive than ever before. You need to teach your leaders to care because, believe it or not, the number one reason why people leave, as you can see on my screen, is having leaders who don't care. Now, let's take a closer look at the people or the workforce. The workforce today is multi-generational and more diverse than ever before. Whether it is a baby boomer who may be an idealist, or a Gen X who values individualism, or a millennial who might deeply question things, or a Gen Z who loves constant communication. The leadership capabilities that matter the most for each group, whether you are a leader or what you desire to see in your leader. We found in our research that they all indeed value the same leadership capabilities. So, what are these leadership capabilities that matter? In the old days, if you looked at leadership models, they would typically talk about things like customer centricity, innovation, execution, accountability, teamwork. They're all very important, but they don't necessarily create behaviors that drive trust, care, and belonging. They tell you what you need to do, but they're less about how you need to act and behave. The leadership capabilities that matter the most today are what we call power skills. And I'll give you some context on where these came from. There's this group at UC Berkeley called the Greater Good Science Center, and this particular group studies happiness. And they've defined characteristics or words that create happiness, which are some of the words that you can see on my screen. These are what we call the power skills of growth. These are not soft skills. They're power skills, and these are the skills that every leader needs. And we need to reinforce these skills in every way possible, recognize and reward these skills, and make them a core element of our culture, because these are the behaviors you want to foster in your leaders and potentially in everyone who could be a leader. All right, so how do we build these new skills? How do we build them at scale for everyone in the organization? How do we build this new breed of multi-generational leaders? And also, how do we personalize leadership development? What we recommend and endorse as a holistic approach to leadership development is what we refer to as the 6 E's. The first E is envision. You need to start with a clear vision. What does good leadership look like in your organization? Leadership models are unique to every organization, and they must mirror the culture, mission, and values that you stand for. Then the education piece comes in, where you need to put in place formal trainings and programs to ensure all leaders know how to get things done and also how to lead people. So for getting things done, you need to train them on products, programs, processes, policies. And to lead people, they need coaching on performance management, goal setting, how to give meaningful feedback, and how to mitigate biases. But just education isn't enough, because studies tell us that in barely over a period of 24 hours, people forget 70% of what they learn. So you need to cement learnings from the formalized trainings and education through experiences that will help them apply those learnings in the flow of work. So you need to think about job rotations, developmental assignments, stretch assignments, and international jobs. Well, some people are born leaders, but most people learn it over time through experiences, and by doing it, and organizations need to facilitate that. The next piece is exposure. Some of the best lessons in leadership come from observing, talking with, and getting feedback from others. Organizations need to create access to coaches and mentors and exposure to outside companies and senior executives. Vendors like Coach Hub can, in fact, allow you to have access to a huge network of coaches in an affordable and scalable way, making this kind of tailored exposure and opportunity for everyone in the organization, not just a rarefied experience reserved for top of the REM executives. And then another important piece is evaluation. This is tricky because, particularly if you aren't a good leader, people will rarely ever have the courage to tell you that you're not a good leader. So we need feedback tools to keep us honest. Often we need some forms of psychological or other forms of assessments to see where we have blind spots. Coaches can help leaders self-reflect and understand where they have rough edges, and they can help them be better leaders. Now, the final piece, once you've created a common language and understanding around what good leadership means for your organization, and you've given your leaders the development they need to build those skills, what next? You also need to empower your leaders with tools, insights, and resources that they need to be effective. Now, if we need leaders who will empathize and care for our workforce, we need to start with caring for our leaders and ensuring that we are creating capacity for them rather than adding to their existing workloads. So we need to empower and equip our leaders with tools that will provide them with insights in an easy and consumable way. So think about team health dashboards, action platforms, and productivity tools. So essentially, you need to start with defining leadership. What does it mean for your organization? Then you need to develop critical leadership skills. You need to foster the right behaviors. And then you also need to empower and equip your leaders with tools and resources to lead effectively. Ultimately, what we're saying is traditional leadership development, which followed a stepwise architected process, does not work anymore. You need to build leaders at every level. Leadership development today is a critical enabler of business outcomes, and organizations need to build leadership capabilities for everyone in the organization. All right, the last thing I want to quickly talk about before I wrap it up is the role of technology. The leadership development tech market is exploding with solutions all the way from personalized one-on-one coaching to live cohort-based or group coaching, AI-based coaching, and nudge technology for behavior change. The metaverse, AR, VR, and simulation-based platforms, they're redefining leadership development, and they're in fact very powerful in helping leaders develop difficult interpersonal skills. Then there are platforms that are not really leadership development tools, but they're a new breed of performance management tools. They allow agile goal settings. They show real-time performance data about individuals and teams. They inform leaders. They help them understand where leaders need to focus, and we call them action platforms. Of course, we're flooded with content providers that deliver many types of self-help or self-directed learning resources on leadership. And then there are platforms that allow pairings with huge networks of coaches like Coach Hub. The coaching market is particularly flourishing right now. And the fact is, when we asked 8,000 HR professionals in our global capability assessment on what developmental opportunities they value the most, coaching surfaced as the most valued development opportunity. With that, I'll hand it over to our panel to dig deeper on how they're operationalizing these new models of leadership, building these new capabilities, and developing leaders in today's diverse multi-generational workforce. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Nihal. Thank you, Nihal. It's a pleasure to have heard your insights today. So welcome, everyone, and let me now introduce our esteemed panel to answer some questions and have some discussions on the topics we've had. So welcoming to the panel, please, Linda Liu, Practice Leader of HR, Culture and Sustainability Asia Campus at L'Oreal. Lee Murphy, Group Chief Human Resources Officer, FWD Insurance. We have Gary Hegarty, General Manager, Organisational Development from Graincorp. And Sean Tan, partner at Mercer. Welcome, everyone, and thank you. Look forward to your insights today. So we have three themes that we'll touch on today. The first around breaking down stereotypes. So for the first time ever, as we just heard from Nihal, there are now 4 generations working together in the same workplace. Baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Generation Z. So the question, do workers from different generations have wildly different needs? Or are they more similar than we think? What's your view? Let's start with you, Lee.
Hey, thanks, Tim, and welcome to everyone. On this session, I think the word, I wouldn't say wildly different. I think from my own perspective, I've actually been reflecting on this, and more similar than we think. I think at the same time we need to ensure that there are offerings and a set of experiences that we provide depending on your life and career stage. And when I think about age as a number. We've got to make sure that with those offerings, that in the moments that matter most to people, that we're really relevant across the generations themselves.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Lee. And Gary, what about you? What's your perspective?
Thanks, Tim. Again, hello, everybody. Very similar to Lee, if I'm honest. I think there's a lot of similarity in what people want. They want to add value. They want to be kind of contributing to a purpose. How that shows up, however, could be a little bit differently. So, as Lee mentions, the necessity to personalize, to think of the person, to construct a solution that matches the individual as opposed to a group, I think is absolutely critical. We will often hear the change of every generation, the entitlement word being thrown around. Personally, I think what that boils down to is more and more knowledge is gathered in early life in the more modern generations, and so therefore there's less passive and reflection of people, and much more active in seeking out additional knowledge, contribution, purpose, and it's our responsibility really to provide that.
Thanks. I like what you've said there around your responsibility in terms of driving that passion and purpose. And Linda, turning to you, a famously and highly sought after training ground in the cosmetic space at L'Oreal, how does the differing generational gap play out for you?
Thanks, Tim. Hi, everyone. So very glad to see you here and share my own experience. So I would like to share with you my daily work in L'Oreal Asia campus. So usually one learning and development project, there are 3 team members working together. So I as practice leader, and I have a project manager and a coordinator. And may I ask you whether you know Chinese zodiac year? So yes. Each Chinese zodiac year is represented by an animal. Each Chinese zodiac sign is decided by our birth year. So I would like to share with you, there are 3 tigers in my project team, but we are not at the same age. So possibly you can guess our age now. So I'm the oldest, my PM in the middle, and the learning coordinator and tech support, she is the youngest. So actually we are totally different, even we are Chinese. We were born in different times, grow in different world economic situations, and study in different school and majors. And also we have different strengths and characters, different life purpose and motive to the task. But actually I discovered that we have some common needs. Our way to make effective and happy teamwork. For example, we all want to be connected and feel the belong to the same project team. And also we would like to clarify everyone in the team, our key responsibilities and how to leverage our strengths. And we would like to speak up openly and challenge each other for the status quo, but with good purpose. And also we would like to not only working for the project, working for L'Oreal, the organization, but also want to learn and grow by practice. So every time we always ask ourselves, what the project means to me? Hope that it can also support our own growth. So that's my sharing.
Thank you. Some really excellent perspectives there. And one, as I think about the topic around multi-generational workforce, a theme that's coming to mind is obviously the aging workforce. There's research from PwC, it's estimated that US $3.5 trillion could be added to OECD country economies just by encouraging this golden age workers or older workers to stay a few years longer in the workforce or perhaps return and bring their skills back to the organisation. Sean, turning to you, what are the common misconceptions around this golden age segment in your mind?
Thank you, Tim. Hi, everybody. I'm Sean. It's very nice to be here. So indeed, there may be some misconceptions about people in the golden age, in that some may suffer from, deterioration in physical and cognitive abilities, and these things may limit their ability to contribute. Also, that some are obstinate, some may even be derogative to others because they think they know more than others. There is a Chinese phrase that I hear from time to time coming from such individuals. When literally translated, it means that I have eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. The image of this is rather ludicrous, if you ask me, but this is essentially a dismissive way of implying that they are a lot more experienced than others and hence know a lot more. These things are not helpful. So if I ever feel tempted to say something like this, I need to remind myself to think again. The other generations also have received their share of misconceptions. Some refer to the millennials and Gen Zs as the strawberry generation, which implies that they are soft and not resilient. Also that they are entitled. We covered a little bit of that just now, because things came to them easy when they were growing up. They belong to the era of participation trophies. But allow me to come back to my first point on change in cognitive abilities with age. There is an increasing body of research that breaks down cognitive abilities into two subcategories. The first is what we call fluid cognitive ability. This reflects an individual's capacity to process information and solve novel problems. Now, this type of cognitive ability does show some decline beyond the 40s. The second is known as crystallized cognitive ability. This involves the ability to deduce secondary relational ideas by applying previously learned relational ideas. And this ability, in fact, keeps going up over time and does not come down until very, very much later in life. I shan't, specify how much later in life. So in essence, I think it is important to take a more circumspect view when considering this topic.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. And Lee, perhaps turning back to you, as you think about the career that you've led and the organisations that you've had the ability to be a leader at, what are some of the anecdotes or experiences that you can share with us in terms of approaches to these differing talent segments in your own experience?
Yeah, look, I think when thinking about the golden age and certainly those closer to retiring age, we're certainly looking at that closely because people are living longer, the medical technology, the quality of life, and also people want more, even longer in their careers to extend those careers as well. And I think from an organizational view, we need to make sure that those offerings and opportunities, being an inclusive workplace, are actually there. So I think one practical part is when we're looking at Japan, where often the retirement age has been 60. You lose a lot of good talent at that time, a lot of expertise, technical or otherwise, that's been built up, layered upon as such. And I think from our perspective, we're extending the retirement age to 65, but also looking at 70 in the Japanese context. And that's significant. When you start to think about the longevity that you're putting for people's careers, but also the signal that's sending to some of the younger generations on how they start to think about the pacing of their career and the life stages. If you give certainty in the way that you look at lengthening your careers, people can plan around that in terms of in and out, opting in and out, the way that they look at their career development, the way they pace their professional development as well. So I'm actually very excited about how we extend for those who want it, within the workplace as well. I think it's really important. And part of that is providing flexible working practices. And it's something that we look at in terms of the way we package the hours as well for people. So I think there's actually a huge opportunity from a HR perspective when we look at our benefits mix, but also our flex working optionality as well. So for me, the sort of thought leadership and research is going to be really required over the next couple of years in terms of how we look at this for our workforce. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. Thank you, Lee. Pace of change. I wrote that one down. I think that's a really interesting comment that you've said, and how we flex. We must flex for these different talent segments. So if you've got a point of view here or a question related to how you've managed the pace of change, make sure you put that in our comments so we can address that later today. So let's orient the conversation now to talent segments, the segments at risk. We spoke about generational segments. So what about thinking about the talent population as a whole? Perhaps thinking, that blended zodiac approach that Linda shared with us a moment ago. Perhaps starting with you, Linda, with all that we've heard from Nihal and considering your talent population as a whole, what segment is most at risk for you in your organisation right now, and why?
So from my personal perspectives in the organizations, that the business and function leaders, especially at the middle level, they have a big pressure now. Because, for example, our new vision of leadership for L'Oréal is the role of a manager is both to lead and to enable others to strive. So I feel a lot of time pressures for this group of people, the managers, the leaders, the people leaders. So in L'Oréal, you play the role as entrepreneur. It's not enough. You just run the business well. That's fine. That's necessary, but not enough. So leaders also should be an innovator. So do the innovation and the creative ideas for the life-changing in the beauty, for the consumer's beauty experience. That's why L'Oréal can keep the top 1 position in the beauty industry worldwide. And also leaders should have strategic thinking to shape the future and make the way for people to follow you. And so you needed to create the sense of purpose with clear vision and mission. And also now we don't, promote individual heroes. So in L'Oréal, team is hero. So how to integrate, how to do the collaboration across team for the whole organization's agility, that's essential for L'Oréal now. So not only know the diversity, equity, inclusion by the methodology, but how to behave, how to become the role modeling as an inclusive leader. And also this group of managers also needed to spend time with their teams. Even you have a big team or small team, you need to spend time with them, have regular dialogue with them to grow them, to understand their purpose and to understand how to motivate them. Because L'Oréal believe, grow the people first, then we can grow our business. So you see, this group of people need to do many things. So, and also for themselves, they needed to do the leadership upskilling and the reskilling, also taking care of their well-being. So I really hope that as HR, we can support this group of people as much as possible.
Thanks, Linda, for sharing the mid-manager segment. Turning to you, Gary, across the business that you manage, tell us a little bit about the segments that are on top of mind as a risk for you right now.
I've certainly got a lot of similarity to what Linda shared regarding the kind of evolution of a leader and the expectations of a leader. With regards to the talent segments that we feel at risk, I think the reality is all of them. There is a high demand on talent here in Australia. We've got nearly as many jobs advertised as we have unemployed in the entire country. Record lows. We've got therefore more desperate employers coming to the table. So you've got candidate choice, and people can choose or to go or stay. They can choose to join or leave. So the challenges, I guess, is the risk is, are you relevant? Are you a business that people want to be a part of, that they can relate to, and they can feel that they can contribute both personally and professionally, and that kind of whole version of work-life integration. So with that in mind, and we've certainly touched on that, and Linda talking about the the individual requirement, the individual connection that that leaders need with their team. I think we've got to create an individual and personalized reason to join or stay. So our bigger challenge comes to the shifting mentality, the shifting behavioral skill set that is a leader versus a manager. So what are we doing day in, day out that makes people want to follow, makes people want to be part of the story, makes people want to be proud to build a legacy. So it's no one singular talent segment. And I think that's actually the right thing, because every talent segment is at risk, but every talent segment is a great opportunity if we can get everything lined up. There is an incredibly changing view of tenure. So GrainCorp is a large agribusiness. It's a well-known and well-established Australian brand with a global presence. And with most agricultural backgrounds, farming backgrounds, tenure is a big thing, 10, 20, 30, 40 years plus. With the significant moves, particularly Gen Y, so millennials and geriatric millennials and Gen Z, in terms of the tenure being cut down to about 3 years. And so that shifting view of what are we getting from the 3 years and how do we create more careers within one business, again, has the opportunity to drive lifelong learning, leadership capability, leadership connection, but real purpose for individuals to be part of it.
Thanks, Gary. Really great insights and observation for what's going on at your company. And Lee, when we connected ahead of this conversation, you had shared with us you're also facing this talent crisis being more acute than before. Do you mind sharing us a little bit about what that impact is for your business?
Yeah, look, if I can just build off Gary and Linda's commentary, which I support fully. I think in my working career, I have not seen the dynamics in the talent side. It's actually extraordinary what we're going through. And I think the key word's not necessarily challenge, but opportunity, and how you turn this from a mindset perspective. I think all talent segments are at risk, depending on the cycle you're in. With critical roles, some can be more risk at others. But at the same time, early in career, we run particular digital programs, graduate programs, constantly at risk. And, having to re-recruit, some of our more experienced managers as well. It's a constant in terms of each of the segments as well. I think BCG, and many may have heard this, but I think it's, I may be misquoting, but at least, the talent crisis is over, talent has won. So the actual power dynamics have shifted, to the employee more so than from the organization. And I think from that perspective, it's not BAU. So, and it's actually, in some cases acute, but at the other stage, it's also dripping away. And what I mean by that is it's slowly eroding in certain areas, and strategically, you have to have a different series of interventions, in terms of your talent governance, making sure that you're well integrated with your L&D programs as such. We heard the words alignment with your purpose and vision from that perspective as well. So I think also when you look at your initiatives, we're spending a lot of time from an FWD perspective. We're Pan-Asian insurer, all in Asia, 10 markets. So how do we actually get, the internal talent marketplace operating effectively, making sure that we provide those career and professional development opportunities? So that's a big one. So do you have a build or a buy strategy? Is it blended? So we're going through all those iterations, and at the same time, we're looking for more sophisticated, talent sourcing models. So how do we scan the markets? How do we get sets of diverse experiences that may not be in the insurance industry and bringing them in? And then the onboarding and the stickiness that's required as well, because Gary hit on something around tenure. And that tenure piece where you had that predictable 2 to 3 years or 4 years in role, those times are going. Things are more dynamic as well. but also other employers may only be looking at that you have 3 to 6 months experience, and they're willing to bring you on into their company. So the tenure piece is actually irrelevant more and more as I look across the industry. So I'll just pause on that, Tim, but that's a few thoughts.
Thanks, Lee. Really good observations from everyone. So segments of the population we're seeing are all generally at risk. I'll anchor on the comments that Linda shared on a pressing need around mid-managers. We certainly hear that in the conversations we're having across the region, is this pressure for many of our mid-managers to respond to the need. So pressure from the top in terms of business, but also managing the day-to-day expectations of that workforce, of that talent that expects to be promoted within 3 months, or the family, the person who has to identify and manage their work life from home in this hybrid workforce. So certainly hearing this sense of pressure around mid-managers. Microsoft just released a report recently, their work trend index, that said 76% of mid-manager employees said that they would stay at their company longer if they could benefit from more learning and development support. And combined with that, we also see, before I turn to you, Sean, thinking about CEO interest, the research that we've seen recently from research, the Global Leadership Forecast says 55% of CEOs say leadership development is their number one priority. And so, Sean, you've been a group CHRO previously, you've held senior leadership roles at GIC, at GovTech. Now you're at Mercer consulting with CEOs and clients across the region. What are you hearing from CEOs around leadership development and why this is a priority for them?
Yeah. So Tim, as we look at our latest Global Talent Trends study for the year of 2022, we see that more than 4 out of 5 CEOs are saying that the business agenda and the people agenda have never been more intertwined. Business success, more than ever, is going to be now dependent on how the people agenda is being advanced. And leadership development is a key part in the people agenda. Relatedly, reskilling and upskilling is also one of the workforce initiatives that both the HR leadership group and the executives group believe would generate the highest business impact. Furthermore, leadership development boosts employee engagement, increases the organization's ability to deal with talent gaps in the talent pipeline, and reduces the pain and cost associated with turnover. So we are really seeing a time when turnover is really, really high, and the cost of doing business is increasing. People are having also a lot more choices. If you look at the latest data coming from the Singapore Ministry of Manpower, we are looking at the ratio of 3.53 vacancies for every 1 job seeker. So this is really a time of choices for talent. And I do agree that the talent crisis is over and the talent population has won. So organizations really need effective leaders to retain and inspire people to go the extra mile, to become the greatest versions of themselves so as to drive the best commercial outcomes for organizations under such trying conditions.
Talent crisis is over and the talent population has won. I think that has to be our tagline from today's discussion. Lee, what about you? Are you hearing the same from your CEO of business leaders? Is it a challenge and being exhibited and communicated in that same strength in your organization?
Yeah, I think moving from challenge to opportunity. So clearly our CEO sponsors, in fact, a senior leadership development program that we hold twice a year, Forum 55, and we make significant investments from a leadership development perspective. And we also have a university programs, foundational programs. But to Linda's earlier point, our focus at scale has been on our people managers, and to lead through these times. As you said, the pressure never been more. Short-term focus, long-term strategic. So one of our pillars of our people and organizational strategy is Leaders Reimagined. And you can go on for a lot in that space. But in the people manager space, we look at different interventions. We run masterclass series where we have our executive team, opening those series. We've had 1,800 manager participants over the last 12 months, which is extraordinary. And that focuses on engagement and effectiveness. But when we look at the core of our manager and leader development programs, it's lead yourself, lead your team, lead your business, and keep the simplicity and clarity of that, and make sure that you're, supporting in relation to all those needs. Because if you can't lead yourself, then you can't lead your team or your business. And I see this self-care, you'll see that language coming in more, self-care, the well-being side of the work in terms of how you support the emotional, physical, social connectedness of our leaders as well. And I'm actually very excited about how the team has been developing that space, and we've got both the CEO's support, investment, and time in the way that that we're pursuing these areas.
Thank you, Lee. Reflecting on Nihal's commentary in the presentation at the start, she mentioned investments in people development and so on are shifting gears as so much is forgotten after people leave a classroom, and hence coaching being the top priority in her commentary for people development initiatives. And the piece you mentioned around well-being, women in leadership, as well as inclusive leadership, these being the top 3 trends that we've seen from a Coach Hub global buyers survey, looking at people who buy coaching services and the problems they're looking to solve. What's encouraging is that 9 out of 10 HR leaders have committed to investing further in coaching as a way to improve these talent segments and populations as a whole. So shifting gears a little bit and thinking about how do you develop leadership skills across a hybrid multi-generational workforce and create a continuous lifelong learning culture. Gary, if I can call on you, you're working with Coach Hub right now on a leadership development program. Perhaps you could share more about that program itself and what you're looking to solve through that partnership.
Come to me with the easy questions, Tim. Hey, look, there's many ways to look at this. I think historically, when we look at leadership development, it's very much attendance equals competence. And so you'd disappear for a couple of days into a classroom, and suddenly the ails of the world were cured. As Linda mentioned, as Nihal mentioned, in terms of the retention of that knowledge, it's minimal at best, I think. So the shifting way that people absorb knowledge is very different. Being able to connect with people is very different. What we've tried to look at is that multifaceted blended approach to leadership capability, with that shift in mindset of what actually is leadership. I made a couple of notes that we talk about effective leadership, and that effectiveness has I'll alter the tracks here a little bit. Our view of effective leadership has changed over the last 5 years. So an effective leader was one who delivered results. I don't think we've got any doubt in that. However, an effective leader now is governed by the impact that they have on those who follow them, those who are around them, the legacy that they're building that has a positive impact not only on the business that they're employed with, but their overall life. So on average, the average adult spends, I believe it's 90,000 hours in work. That's quite a significant amount. So as leaders, what can we do to create a positive environment where that 90,000 hours are adding benefit to you, to your family, to your life, to everything around you? So when we looked at the wider partnership, Coach Hub being part of that, it was looking at different segments of leadership to create a common language. So whether that's about leadership impact, whether that's about consideration, whether it's care. So going back to the areas in Nihal's presentation about care, and also looking at the reason people leave is because they don't have a caring manager. So we looked at what can we do to create connection and a leadership capability that is genuinely, you are here for your people. Now, those who have maybe heard me talk before, I've simplified this even further, and I'll try not to be crude. Leadership comes down to don't be bad to people. Be nice. That's the most simplistic way we can look at it. So that's how we focus a lot of our impact-based leadership, of considering what have you done today to build a legacy that's positive for you and those around you. Coach Hub also offers us the opportunity to take the face-to-face elements and scale them up with ongoing goal setting, goal attainment. It's a scalable solution. It's taken us away from just this attendance equals competence. It brings an embedding aspect to things. But when I look at coaching on a more holistic level, for far too long, it's just been the domain of the privileged few. It's been a premium tool offered to a few people at the top table, maybe those on the talent programs, and then it stops. We are really keen to democratize that as wide as we possibly can. Everybody should benefit from professional and experience and exceptional coaching. That has to be in tandem with so many other things, but it's a key step forward from where we've been in the past, Tim. So in a nutshell, it's about managing that blended approach. So you have the education element that Nihal talked about. You have the exposure and being able to put things into practice, but the reflection, the refinement, the feedback, and then the pivot and go again that coaching and feedback and regular dialogue brings. That for us, I believe, is going to support the changing face of leadership and support the expectations that we all have.
Thanks, Gary. It's an exciting journey, and thank you for sharing it and sharing it with us. Linda, I'd love to turn over to you, if I may. How are you driving leadership development and a lifelong learning culture at L'Oreal?
Thanks, teams. I totally agree with what Lee and Gary shared. I think leadership is always the most popular topics in our learning and development world. So in L'Oreal, we have the Leadership and Culture University. So we provide many programs to support the managers in their transition moment. For example, transition to people manager, transition to team manager, transition to function, head of function, transition to GM, transition to executive leaders, transition to zone leaders. This is the new program we will launch after the National Day holiday. So you see a lot of programs to support the leaders to grow and to face different expectations from the organizations and to face the different scenarios in their career growth. And besides this, we also give the freedom to our leaders and employees to have the flex programs every year. They have the freedom to pick up one program in the catalog for their personal growth. And as this is from the knowledge and the skill side, and I totally agree with Gary that leaders, they also need the most difficult part is self-awareness. How to help leaders to enhance their self-awareness, to really go outside of their limited beliefs. So coaching is really powerful tools. So in L'Oreal, we provide coaching essential programs for not only the HRBPs, but all the people leaders. And we also provide coaching tools for HRD and also for the senior leaders to help them to further develop their coaching skills. And we also have the program called CoDev. CoDev actually in the market is a kind of peer coaching, collective coaching. So let the leaders to share their pain points and challenges with each other in a safe environment and help each other. We call it share and care.
Nice.
Lots of head nods today. I'm loving that everyone seems to be in agreement on the panel on well-being and on purpose and on making life easy from a learning opportunity, right? Lee, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think just more on the lifelong learning culture piece. I think I went through the leadership development piece earlier, and I actually really enjoyed hearing Linda and Gary a moment ago, and I thought democratizing coaching to the many rather than the few, really resonated strongly from that perspective. I think on the lifelong learning culture, working with our head of L&D at the moment and our head of talent, how to embed that in your organization is the sweet spot that we're going for. And I was thinking about time and space. How do you create that space within your organization for those moments? And then how do you role model the time, you know, in creating time for your leaders to have? Because that's the most valuable commodity at the moment is time. And, you know, there's a series of trade-offs as you look at this lifelong learning culture. And I think just two proof points there. One is self-paced learning. So we're using technology that we heard earlier, you know, from Nihal, and we're using a mobile app, you know, through a Manager Essentials program that we've developed in-house and with a partner, and gamification with that, socially connecting amongst the leaders as well, but leveraging the technology for that self-paced and peer-supported learning is absolutely critical, so that they get to huddle together through that. And that's taken a really good take up from that perspective. And the other piece is back to Gary's point on, we want to create also amongst our people leaders and people managers a coaching culture. And that takes years to actually deploy, embed, and then practice and role model. And you've got to provide that environment, you know, for that to occur as well. And I'm looking forward to how we take that out. And probably the third one is on the lifelong learning. You can talk about it, but you actually need to put, you know, demonstrated models in place. So we're looking at an anytime learning concept, you know, for all our people, and providing them with opportunities both on bespoke, you know, using AI and other ways to make sure that the relevant course gets to you in a timely manner, self-paced in the way that you learn, but also tied to your development and career plan as well. So it's sort of joining the dots in a holistic way to bring that to our people.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lee.
So thanks, Tim.
And sharing from everyone for sharing your ideas and your vision and how you're responding to today's challenge. You know, Lee summarized it, but our mission at CoachHub is to democratize coaching to people of all levels worldwide, and doing that at scale, at ease, removing any friction, and giving access to individual employees, a coach in their pocket, to the top 5% business coaches globally, and be able to see those proven results and be able to work on a lot of those purpose-driven areas. So it's been a pleasure to hear from so many of you today. I think we've got a real sense of the commitment you each have of driving to that people development culture and the visions that you're building for the generational workforce we live in. We really appreciate it. I'd love to turn over to some Q&A, because we have had some coming through the chat box and the comment section on WeChat and LinkedIn. So let me quickly address one. We have a question that came through from Andre. We hear many leaders are struggling to reskill their workforce to keep up with the demands of disruption. What can we do to support leaders, organisations and individuals to drive skills transitions to prepare for the future? Sean, perhaps I turn to you. What are you consulting on or speaking about on this front?
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. I think Gary, Linda, and Lee had it super well covered. So maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the organization perspective and maybe the attitudinal aspect for individuals. Really, the way that we look at lifelong learning is that it's part of a broader agenda of continued workforce transformation. And workforce transformation is about redesigning jobs, it's about reskilling people, retooling job holders, and also, very importantly, reframing mindsets. And organizations could review employees who are in at-risk jobs and look for skills that overlap with the hard-to-fill vacancies, and then map a learning pathway to help people move from one job family to another. Another possibility is to introduce skills-based pay across the employee lifecycle, in parallel to also understand the market value and availability of in-demand skills, and then incentivize efforts to acquire such skills, as well as the application of such skills in projects. One other way is also to evolve the entire talent infrastructure to now use skills as the new currency. And this is where AI becomes particularly useful to match skills to tasks, and also to take into account adjacencies of skills. Now, doing this would allow employees to know that skills is now the basis for continued employment, and now that will in a way give them healthy pressure to go and pursue the skills that are needed to stay employed. And the skills they possess now become open knowledge within the enterprise. People would then be a lot more motivated to engage in continued and lifelong learning. Very importantly, at the individual level, I feel as part of this construct, a few conditions need to be in place. First, there must be confidence, right, that this can be done. Secondly, and this is something that I cannot overemphasize, there must be humility to never stop learning, irrespective of who you are, who you think you are, and whom you're learning from or how you're learning. Thirdly, a general curiosity, because the world's problems are now much more complex. And the ability to solve those problems would not exist within a single person or a single company or a single nation for that matter. Suffice to say, solutions increasingly need to take a more transdisciplinary nature, and we really need people to come together and have an equal voice to contribute, irrespective of status, age, or anything, any sort of labeling that may separate us.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. A great response there. I've got one more, and I'm going to put it to Gary. It's from JJ. How do you get the leaders buy-in that they need the leadership coaching?
It's a really good question. I think many leaders believe that they are already there, well, however we look at it, because I got this position for me, so why would I change? It's about, and it probably links to what Sean was saying as well. It's what's the intrinsic drivers? Why are people doing the role? What do they want to be remembered for? What do they remember? What do they forget? What would they like other people to recall? We do a very simple exercise. I refer to, we've all worked for leaders who we would walk over broken glass to work for again. That is a positive impact department. We've all worked for leaders who would happily stamp into that broken glass never to see again. They've had that kind of impact on us as well. So we do a very simple exercise of, fast forward 18 months, 2 years, congratulations, you're an amazing leader, you're leaving, you've got a better job, a bigger job, more complex role. What's the leaving speech that your team have written for you? What do you want to be remembered for? What is the legacy you're creating? That then becomes the aspirational goal. And each and every day, we ask them to look at that. What is your aspiration? What is your legacy you wanted to create? What are you doing today that delivers against that? The important part here is there's no point us saying, this is what you need to be. This is what you need to do. The key part with any motivational driver is, these are your words. This is what you have said is important. This is what you want to be remembered for. What are you doing about it?
Gary, great response. Any other comments from the panel? No. Okay. Fantastic. It's been an amazing experience here. Thank you so much. Hearing about the passion that you bring into your conversations, into your workplaces, into the leadership profiles that you're developing and grooming in your organisation. So thank you, Linda. Thank you, Sean, Gary, and Lee, for your time today. We really appreciate it, and it's been great learning and hearing from you all. It is now the moment that you've all been waiting for those still on the line. It is our surprise lucky draw. We're giving away Amazon and JD.com gift e-cards and books. There's only 5 lucky winners from our registrations today. And you do actually have the option to not receive the gift e-cards and books and instead have us, Coach Hub, plant trees in your local community on behalf of our CSR partner, Ecosia. So the drum roll, please. Okay, our winners. We have Deepti Sachdeva from Westpac Group in Australia, Rupali Padasani from Samsung Electronics in India, Michael Gan from ACOM in Shanghai, Annie Swen from LF Logistics in Hong Kong, and Jaidev Ram Mohan from DBS Bank in Singapore. Congratulations to all the winners. We'll be reaching out to you individually. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Please give us your feedback, your thoughts in the comment section here on LinkedIn or WeChat, and continue to follow us. Follow our channels on LinkedIn and WeChat for updates for our 3rd and final session on the Lifelong Learning Series, which will take place 27th of October, featuring top coaches in the the region, and senior HR leaders from GovTech, Societe Generale, and ASMPT. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for your attendance today. Have a great day ahead. Gary, Linda, Sean,
Hi guys, can you hear me? Great, thank you.
Yes.
It's a bit of echo.